Today, we're exploring a theme that lives at the intersection of mystery and neuroscience, something called magic. We're going to talk about what it looks like, how it works, and why practices like the 13 sacred nights can shift the way our brain and our nervous system perceive the world. And when I talk about magic, I don't mean illusion or fantasy. I mean the felt sense of aliveness that arises when we attune to the unseen layers of reality, the synchronicities, the symbols, the subtle ways life communicates with us when we slow down enough to listen. And what's fascinating is that this isn't actually woo, even though it could appear that way. When we enter states of awe, reverence, or ritual, our neurochemistry literally changes. From a nervous system lens, magic is what actually makes the body shift out of survival mode and open into oneness and wonder. So the biological and biochemical cocktail reorganizes us towards possibility. So dopamine will rise when we feel something meaningful. Serotonin and oxytocin will increase with a sense of connection to something larger than ourselves. And the default mode network, this part of the brain that sort of loops in overthinking and striving and a lot of self-reflection, that can get more quiet. And even the vagus nerve, which signals safety, allows us to perceive subtlety instead of threat. So magic, in many ways, is a form of neurobiological coherence. It's basically a synchrony between the seen and the unseen, the inner and the outer worlds. And it's really less about believing in something supernatural, and it's really more about inhabiting this receptive state where guidance, coincidence, insight become more perceptible and more meaningful. So practices like the 13 sacred nights help train this receptivity. They open this seasonal portal into deeper listening and moving us from this place of control into communion, from even hyper-analysis into receiving. And when we allow the invisible world to participate in our decisions and in our reflections, life can start to feel very enchanting. It brings us basically to a place where we're more in attunement with what's happening around us, this deeper intelligence that runs through us and mirrors itself back to us everywhere. So in many ways, the magic we experience literally is the magic that we are. So today, my guest, Lara J, we're going to be exploring the history and the heart of this particular practice, how she works with these 13 sacred nights. She's got a program and books and a very cool oracle deck that we'll talk about. And so without further ado, Lara, welcome.
Thank
Very
you,
glad to have
Anne
you.
Marie. So happy to be here. And that was such a beautiful introduction. I just resonated so deeply with so many of the things that, you just shared.
Yeah, what stood out for you?
Oh, this idea that that the mysterious or the magical it is really not something so out there, and that as we begin to attune to it, we learn to bring it into our reality as something that is just quote normal. It's part of this reality that we've just been tuned out to or missing out on or oblivious to, but that it's not necessarily supernatural. It is quite natural, and we're just beginning to bring it in to our reality in a more aware and awake way.
Yeah, I love that you plucked that out. It does
Yeah.
seem like there's, in previous years, I've wanted to share this with some of the executives that I work with, and I found myself hesitating because, and I've done that a lot in my career because I want to make sure that it feels accessible. But I feel like I've started doing it, and it's been amazing what happens when people actually see this as just a way of paying more attention. It's really
Right.
like partnering with partnering with the unseen. So I think it would be really cool to, because I definitely want to hear about your journey with all of this, but maybe we could start with, is this related to some kind of religion? Like, what's the history of these nights?
Yeah.
And bring us up to speed of like where they're from and who they're
Yeah.
for.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what I dove into when I asked that question recently, because, and then you can maybe elaborate on your experience, because I know you also are a longtime practitioner of the sacred nights or the holy nights.
Mm-hmm.
But, I this will be my 17th year doing the practice. And I only know that because I remember that I learned it the year my daughter was born. Otherwise, I would
Oh.
be, like, how long have I been doing this? But I can remember because she's 17 and it was the year she was born that I learned it from Damaris, our shared teacher and mentor. And so I self-published an Oracle deck 5 years ago to help guide folks through this practice in response to myself just falling in love with it all those years ago. It completely changing the way that I, as a California native, was moving through the season of darkness in the mountains of Colorado, with this long snowy winter. And then also in response to being a new mom and having this beautiful precious baby and wanting to mark and celebrate and honor these traditions in a way that had more meaning and felt more special and was not just commercialism and materialism and the hustle and the bustle and the franticness that so many of us are tiring of. So I self-published 5 years ago, and that original version of the Oracle deck was quite successful within my own little circle. But I was picked up by publishers a year ago, and they suggested and asked, well, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a history section? I think we think folks are quite curious, and we're quite curious. Where did this come from? And I thought, wow, I've been doing this practice for, I think it was 15 or 16 years at the time, but I actually have no idea what its really deep roots are. I just, took it from Damaris and ran with it and fell in love with it and made it my own. And so I really dove into the history of winter solstice practices and the roots of all these traditions and the roots of our Christmas traditions on a side rabbit hole that's also quite fascinating. And I've now, read 32 books on the history of all of our holidays, and that's quite a fascinating dive as well. Yeah, but the winter solstice has been honored as sacred and special and mystical, and this portal of opportunity, and the veil is thin between worlds for as far back as we can peer into human history. And we know this because of ancient sites, ruins of ancient sites such as Stonehenge and Newgrange and Chaco Canyon in New Mexico and Nabta Playa in Egypt and Archaim in Russia, and they're just every single continent. Goseck Circle in Germany has these ruins of sacred sites that were clearly built with care and precision to capture the first rays of the sunlight on the morning of the winter solstice, and likewise the summer solstice and the equinoxes and the cross-quarter days. But these cultures were very in tune with nature. They were living in communion with nature, as a part of nature, in relationship with nature, with the movement of the sun and the moon and the stars and the cosmos, and very much knowing their place within the greater cosmic picture. And so we can infer that these moments, these turning points in the year, were very important. And again, we see it reflected in on all the continents, and virtually in every culture. And because they were themes that arose from their relationship with nature, although they were completely different cultures and varying traditions, the same themes were arising over and over again. And it was the conquering of light over darkness, the rebirth and the return of the light, specifically with the winter solstice, right? The triumph of life over death, right? This was the return of the warmth and the life-giving sun. And so the word solstice actually means sun standing still, or sol, sun, and then sistere, to stand still, is where the Latin came from. And what happens is that we have the winter solstice, the longest, darkest night of the year. And after that occurrence, the sun appears to stand still on the horizon for 3 days. And in ancient times, this was a shadowy time when it was uncertain whether or not the sun was going to return. So it's appearing to stand still on the horizon for 3 days. And, these people who depend on the warmth and light of the sun are wondering, is it going to return? Are we going to triumph over darkness and death once again in this cyclical way of living? And on the third day, the sun then would incrementally begin to continue in its southward trajectory, and every day there would be a little more light and a little more light and a little more light. So this is why we begin the practice of the sacred nights, not on the actual solstice itself. That's the marking of the beginning of the practice, and we have those 3 days to prepare while we have this cosmic pause holding us, giving us a moment to get our ducks in a row and to think about what we personally want to bring into the new cycle of seasons, what we want to co-creatively give to this imprint, this blueprint that we are co-creating with the divine. And then again on the third day, the light begins to stream back in, and I like to think of it as it's as if we're capturing the tip of the fractal that is going to continue to bloom and unfold in untold beautiful ways throughout the remainder of the cycle. And so all these cultures around the world, again, had their own variations on this theme of light conquering darkness, life conquering death, the cyclical nature of life continuing, the snake eating its own tail. And so that is in essence where this practice came from. Did I find a direct historical line? Absolutely not. And even, and I asked Damaris about it, where did Steiner get it? Because of course she learned this practice from the Anthroposophic community and Rudolf Steiner. And it's like, well, where did he get this practice? And, he himself was drawing from cosmic downloads and this history of all of these mystery traditions and schools that were, again, tapped into these cosmic mysteries, cosmic patterns, the mathematics of the universe and how humanity is a part of all of that, right? But he did not give a specific structure like, game board directions on how to do the 13 sacred nights. And so hence you have all these various traditions, even within the world of anthroposophy, that do the practice in their own way. And with a little slight tweaking here and there. And of course, as you know, one of Damaris's most wonderful gifts is her ability to take something quite esoteric and complicated and complex and to be able to distill it down into something that many, if not most, if not all of us can grab onto and take it and run with it and incorporate it into our modern lives. And so that is a little bit about what I uncovered about the history of the practice. I did include a history in the new, elevated edition, this evolved version of the original that goes into some of just a handful of these practices in different cultures and how they've celebrated the season of darkness, midwinter, and the winter solstice.
Oh, interesting. So the book actually talks about the variations of how
it does.
Okay,
yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Because the thing that I like about the practice is it feels like once you know the essence of why you're doing what you're doing, you can make it your own.
Absolutely.
It's like an intuitively guided process of being in relationship with the practice itself. So, okay, thank you. So I have to go back to my brain is like, wait, literally the sun suspended itself? Like, what does that mean? Is that, were they in Alaska? Like, what are we talking about?
No, this is
metaphorical?
No, this is absolutely what happens after the solstice on or around, sometimes it's the 20th, sometimes it's the 21st.
Yeah.
After that longest, darkest night of the year, the sun does appear to pause on the horizon. And it just has to do with, I don't know. I'm questioning the nature of our entire reality these days and what we've been taught and told. And I just don't know what's up or down or, I have landed in a place of, I know nothing. Mm-hmm. But from our perspective, the sun appears to stand still after the solstice. And then after that third day, which would be, when our first sacred night falls at sundown, on the 24th. So the beginning of the cycle is always in the darkness. It's the womb of
Yeah.
winter, right? A child is first, that spark is first born, the zinc spark in the womb, in the darkness. A lot of people who are indulging in co-creative journaling practices tend to do their journaling and their intentioning in the new moon of the lunar cycle. So sometimes I will mention or think of, this greater solar arc. The winter solstice is like the new moon of the solar cycle, right? So we always start in the darkness, and so it's the same way with the sacred nights. We start in the darkness. We start at sundown, and each 24-hour period is from darkness to darkness, from sundown to sundown.
Great.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a perfect segue just to go in and explain to people what is the practice,
Yes.
and then we'll see where that takes us. But let's lay a foundation so people kind of know what the framework is.
Yeah, and like we already mentioned, there are many variations on this
Mm-hmm.
practice. Again, Steiner, he really just spoke to the nature of midwinter and the season, and this theme of, just like the seed that descends deep into the soil and into the mother and into the earth in order to gather strength and nourishment for the coming cycle, when it would sprout in the spring and bloom into its full expansion in the summertime. And then, in the fall, there's this richness and this falling away and this withering. That same process is mirrored internally in the human heart and mind, right? And in our internal human psyche. So, so we're planting our dream seeds in the fertile soil of the darkness. We're gathering nourishment. We're gathering the spiritual tools and the spiritual nourishment that we'll need for the coming cycle, so that our little seedlings of thought and inspiration can sprout in the springtime. And then in the summertime, we are living the dream that we planted in the womb of winter, in the radiant darkness, in the field of infinite possibility, the 0 point of the year. And then in the fall, again, this richness, harvest time, we're perhaps thinking about what we want to keep for the coming cycle, what we want to throw on the compost pile, reflecting on the year gone by before diving back in for another cycle. So the way that I learned the practice from Damaris, and maybe I've made it my own a little bit along the way as well, but the way that it's taught in the Oracle deck is that the practice begins on the winter solstice. We have those 3 days of cosmic pause to prepare, meaning you are just thinking about, okay, what do I want to bring into this window? What is the imprint that I want to offer for the coming cycle of seasons, winter, spring, summer, fall? Maybe you want to have a certain person in your life, so you make sure you have their contact info, or maybe you pre-arrange a coffee date or whatever it is, or a hike or a walk, or maybe you're just planning on reaching out to them through text or email or a phone call during that 13-day window. If you want to cook more, maybe you're getting your recipes in order, or maybe you want to meditate more and you need a new meditation cushion, whatever it is, just kind of the logistical things to get your ducks in a row, so that when the sacred nights actually arrive, you're not needing to do any of that busy work or that hustle, and you're just kind of ready for that deep inward dive. So those are the 3 days of pause. And then the first official sacred night falls at sundown on December 24th and carries through until sundown on December 25th. So when I say sacred night, I am referring to that entire 24-hour window.
Mm-hmm.
And that first 24-hour window, darkness to darkness, sundown to sundown, is a reflection or a foreshadowing of the entire cycle of seasons to come. So the new year. And with my deck, I have divided the deck into 3 themes or categories. I have animal cards, gem or mineral cards, and then herb cards. And so I draw 1 card from each category, 1 animal card, 1 herb card, 1 crystal card, that first night. And those 3 cards I take as my guides for the entire coming cycle, sort of the overarching themes that will be holding the entire year for me, that I'll come back to over and over again. And then each of the following 12 nights or 24-hour periods is then a reflection of the 12 calendar months. So sundown the 25th to sundown the 26th is a reflection of January, sundown the 26th to sundown the 27th, February, and so on. And so each of those 12 nights, you're then shuffling the entire oracle deck together, all the cards, and just drawing one card each of the 12 nights that will act as sort of further insight. It's like a little reset, a refresh every month. You sort of get to, reflect on the month gone by and then shift your gaze and pivot towards a new theme, a new guide, something new to just sort of chew on during that month, that cycle. And you do want to shuffle the entire deck together for each of the 12 nights. You don't leave the cards out. That's a real common question. The reason for that is that very often you'll draw the same oracle card numerous times within the 13-day window, despite the mathematical odds. And that only makes sense from a logical point of view, because we often have themes that show up in our lives that last more than 30 or 31 days. So it's very common, and people are always surprised, like, oh my goodness, I've drawn this card 4 times. And it's like, well, yeah, that's up for you. That's a friend who's just hanging around, and you're going to be working with that theme. So yeah. So that's the quick,
great.
the quick imprint.
Thank you. And so I think that's really important. The first, I hadn't actually known the solstice to the 24th period is the preparation. It's kind of like preparing for a birth of some kind.
Yeah.
And that the first, so just for listeners, just to repeat that, the 24th to the 25th will be for the entire year of 2026. And then each continuous night will be for each month. And let's talk about the different things you can do, because there's your beautiful oracle deck, which I hope people will check out. It's the 13 Sacred Nights Oracle deck. Let me get it in the camera. And let's just riff for a minute of like brainstorming for people of other things that they could use as their guide in addition to an oracle deck throughout this time.
Yeah. Well, so I should also clarify too that during this window, and this will help that make more sense, like what would I actually do during these 13 nights? We're doing 2 things. The first thing is that we're receiving, right? And well, okay, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. Well, it means simply getting ultra mindful. It's like a boot camp in mindfulness, and simply paying attention to your outer world and your inner world. So you're journaling during these 13 days and nights, everything that's happening externally and internally. That might look like, just writing down the random happenings of your day, even though they don't seem profound or important at the time. Later in the year, you will laugh out loud. It is goosebump inducing how these seemingly random moments during your 13 nights somehow line up with the way that your life is unfolding, give you some insight, help you walk through some challenge with more grace, more perspective, more understanding, more peace, at least maybe more acceptance that, wow, this is challenging, but here I wrote about it in my journal. And so it's clearly there's some greater, order or meaning going on here. Mm-hmm. So you're just getting present. And what I love about this practice, and I don't know how it's been for you, Anne-Marie, over the years, but it's in such a sneaky way, because it's such just a delightful, magical, it can be playful, holiday ritual that you just love to return to year after year. And yet, in retrospect, I can really see how more than any other practice, the 13 Sacred Nights has strengthened in me my ability to walk through my daily life more aware of and awake to the conversation that we are always having with the divine, whether we're aware of it or not, because it's a 13-day practice. So this isn't your 10 or 20-minute morning meditation, or even if you're doing a deeper dive, it's not even a 2-hour meditation. It's a 13-day meditation. So you begin to hone your ability to again walk through your whole 24-hour day aware of the sacred, walking in the sacred, and in that conversation, and paying attention to your internal world of thoughts and emotions, and that inner dialogue that conversation that we're having with the divine. So it's just been profound for me over the years, how it has shifted the way I move through my life. So that's the receive bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the second piece is this co-creative piece where we are planting our dream seeds in the fertile soil of the darkness. And so, well, what does that look like? Again, the things that you're wanting, the inspirations that you're having for the new cycle, rather than just writing down a list of New Year's resolutions, you're actually doing those things during the 13 nights. So you're creating some momentum. You're getting over that inertia hurdle. And you are, in fact, offering this very physical, it's like a stamp or an imprint that just impresses right into this window of time. And it's as if there's a riptide of energy moving through, and it just gets swept right into your future in the most magical way. So we are, again, we're receiving downloads that might look like simply paying attention and journaling. Ideally, it would be wonderful, if we can sit in silence, you know, during each 24-hour window and simply, ask and center what is here now, what is here for me now, receiving in that glassy lake and center the reflections from the divine, from our higher self. Drawing the oracle cards is another tool. And, maybe throwing the I Ching, whatever your tools are, maybe having an altar, all the ways that you perhaps already have a relationship with the sacred, with ritual. Maybe you're spending extra time in nature. You're paying attention to animal behaviors. The animals get real. Yeah, they get real mischievous during this window, which always is surprising and just wondrous. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I want to, maybe we can throw out some things that have occurred in our lives with this. So I love how you just broke it down into receiving, and then that image of imprinting like a stamp,
Yeah.
the dream. So let's start with the receiving, because one of the things that I always do is I track animals, especially during the holy nights or sacred nights. And it was 3 years ago, I think now. But I kept pulling the owl card,
Mm.
and I checked them outside too. And then I pulled it January, February, March, April, and then I didn't pull it again. And what ended up happening that year is that my mom got sick in January, and I started going to see her. She was in Florida, I'm in Colorado, but I was
Mm.
going frequently every single month. And then I was the one to support her through her death and give her the morphine and be there. And that happened in April. Didn't see the owl again. And then I had the bat for the next month, which was May. And that's all about rebirth. And I could just feel like those are the kinds of magical things. Like I was like, why do I keep getting the owl, which is, in Native American, it's about death.
Mm.
So I wonder if you could speak to something in the receptive side, and also elaborate a little bit more on how you're imprinting, like ideas for people about this imprinting
Yeah.
phase.
Yeah, receiving. I mean, just endless stories,
Yeah,
right? But
right.
a handful come to mind. I mean, the year of my divorce, I drew star sapphire, which is all about the nature, our relationships heating up in either positive or negative ways, depending on how we channel that energy, and the nature of reflection within relationship, and this idea that all the things that drive us crazy about others are reflecting back to us some wounded part of ourself that needs to be accepted and seen and witnessed. And likewise, all the things that we admire and cherish and love about others are also, already active and internally, there and awake. And so I drew that the year of my divorce. And if that wasn't a really like appropriate and heavy dose of medicine, I don't know what would be.
No
It just
kidding.
kept me really, really upright.
Uh-huh.
And then, gosh, there was a year when I did not know this during the holy nights, but we later in the year we sold our house and we moved into a travel trailer. We downsized from a home, 1,500 square foot home in Colorado, into a travel trailer in California. And that year, for my overarching theme, or was it actually the month? It might have even actually been the month that we moved. I think it was. I drew squirrel from Jamie Sam's medicine deck.
Yeah.
And she talks about how, you've gathered too many things, and this is a good time to like downsize, to get rid of, so there's things that are just like logistically so lined up that it's just funny.
Yeah.
And, and then there are often, ways that the cards and again, or your journal notes line up in a way that's much more metaphorical.
Mm-hmm.
So I always like to let people know as well that this practice is meant to be helpful. It's never meant to be a curse, a voodoo curse, or, a nocebo kind of a thing. So inevitably I have folks calling me every now and again, or every year saying, oh my goodness, this awful thing happened during the sacred nights. Does that mean that, my whole coming year or such and such a month in the coming year is just going to be awful? And the answer is no. I say, don't strangle the mystery, right? Because we just don't know how these things that happen during this window are going to serve to guide us later on. So the information that's offered is always a gift. It's always, always, always a gift. And it's always and only meant to be helpful. So that's an important reminder. So sometimes it is just jaw dropping the way that things line up word for word. And then sometimes it's this much greater, more metaphorical, still, goosebump inducing, but in a way that you couldn't have preconceived, And so, what are some other examples? There was dreams are also very important to track during this time, your actual dreams that you're having at night. In fact, I always reestablish, get more regular about my dream practice a month or two before the holy nights fall, because I know that if I keep a pen and paper by my bedside and I start getting more regular about remembering my dreams, that by the time the holy nights roll around, I'll be, swimming in my dreams in broad daylight. So, but it takes some practice, you have to sort of, it's like carrying that dream over the threshold from the subconscious sleeping realm into the waking is tricky business, and so it's slippery and it slips
Very
through the
slippery.
cracks, and you think you're going to remember it. I won't forget. And then if you don't write it down an hour later, it's just gone,
That's
you know?
true.
And so, so dreams can be very telling. I had a dream. I've had so many prophetic dreams during the sacred nights, but there was one year where I dreamt, and this is an example of something that could feel a little spooky if you didn't, just hold it in this place of surrender and remembering that it's always a gift. But I had a dream during the sacred nights that somebody had passed, that somebody had died, and my then husband and my daughter and I were all in mourning, and we were grieving the loss of this being, or this, I woke up, I thought it was a human, but in the dream, there was this very, very clear knowing that there was choice, that the being who had taken off had chosen to do so, that there was wisdom in that choice, and that it was a choice, that it wasn't, a life that was taken against anybody's will or anything like that. And then there was also this feeling of a continued connection to the bright light of that soul. And it was just so clear in the dream that light was still with all three of us and was very present and had not gone anywhere, and that we were still just so connected. And so, so that happened during the sacred nights or the holy nights. And, I'm not going to lie, I was a little spooked, like, oh, okay, But again, always just coming back to, it's just a gift. Whatever is offered here is a gift. And later in the year, the month that corresponded to that sacred night, our little dog was taken by a coyote, which was devastating, but it was so incredibly helpful for myself and for my daughter and for my, my husband to have the message of that dream. That, that there was wisdom in this choice, and that she chose to go. She wasn't attacked against her. This was in the design, and so it was really soothing. It was really comforting for all of us. I did have another dream years later. This was another moment where I how some dreams just seem garbled and random, and then there's those dreams that just are like clearly night school.
Yes.
and
Magical. Yeah.
yeah, they're so clear, and it's like so, and loud and vibrant, and you wake up and they're right there. So I had a dream one sacred night that my brother had passed, and I woke up literally ugly crying, like
Yeah.
physically sobbing. And he's been on a long downward spiral, so it's a complicated story and life for him. But and I'll just say right now, he's still with us. But I woke up just sobbing and over the passing of my brother. It's like the dream was so real, and I actually reached out to Annie.
You did.
I did, yeah, because I was like, what do I do with this? And my
Yeah.
brother wasn't doing well at the time. And she just again reminded me, this whatever is offered, it's always a gift. It's not a curse. What will be, will be. And whatever we are being shown is only and ever meant to help and to guide. So I just took that into heart. I won't say that it didn't make me nervous until that month passed in the new year, but he was fine. He did not, he didn't pass. And I definitely approached our relationship very differently that year with just a lot more gratitude and love and attention, and just not taking it for granted, not taking him or our relationship for granted. And so it was an extremely positive gift. And I kind of, and I after that I was like, that was kind of intense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't need it in that format again. Like, it could be more gentle, more gently, please. But what a gift, right? I mean, that just the way that
Yeah.
that it helped me really appreciate and love my brother that year was special.
I
So,
love
and he
that.
needed it. He was going through a lot.
Mm.
So,
Well, and there's
yeah,
something about that particular experience that I think highlights what you were saying is the mystery speaks in such non-linear ways. So
hmm
that was actually potentially the messaging was really, you couldn't have known until you lived through the month, but it was, or the year even, it was so much more about, as to your point, being engaged and in gratitude and more present with him as a being who's going through whatever he was going through.
right, yeah,
And that is kind of what I feel like what this is sometimes, just these wake up calls, present,
hmm
be present for this person, be present to this thing. So beautiful example. And I wonder if we could shift now and talk about the second part of this, which was like stamping in the dreams, stamping
yeah,
in. You even talked about in the preparation, you're like, if there's someone that you want to spend more time with, or, I even think about business offerings in the world or anything that we want to see more of, that there's this preparation time and then there's the holy nights. So can you share a
yeah.
little bit more about that phase?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's one of my favorite parts of this practice because I really get to think about what are my favorite things? What are the things that bring me joy? So again, this practice is delightful. It can be playful. It can feel good, which is the same way that I practice, I approach my Qigong practice. It's like we practice because it feels good, because we
Yeah.
love to engage with the divine and the radiant energy all around us in this way, not because we're militant and disciplined, but because it's delightful and playful. And so what a wonderful opportunity to sit down and brainstorm about all the things that bring you joy and fulfill you and help you feel nourished and happy, and make sure you do them. You get this,
Yeah.
excuse to do all your favorite
Oh
things
my
during
God.
that 13-day window. So I'll spend more time in nature. I spend more time at the beach.
Mm.
I reach out to all my friends that I adore and love and don't spend enough time with. And, if you are wanting, let's say there could be some challenges. Let's say you live in a cold climate and you're wanting to do more gardening during the new cycle. Well, maybe you're just, flipping through seed catalogs or researching what plants are going to do well in your area. So sometimes it's just a tip of the hat if you can't physically do that thing.
Mhm.
Or maybe you want to do more cycling, but again, you live in a cold climate. So maybe, you're researching routes that you want to cycle come cycling season, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. But you are just leaning into, in a very real physical way the activities, the things, the practices, the people that you want to be more present in your coming cycle. My daughter and I live by candlelight every
Oh,
sacred nights. We don't turn on the lights at all for
oh, love
the
that.
whole 13 days. Good lights are my favorite, non-toxic candle. I also like pure
Yeah.
beeswax. But so we do that, which just candlelight is like a warm bath for
Oh,
your nervous system. If you ever
completely.
spent an evening by candlelight and then you flip on the lights, that's when you really feel how jarring that
Mm-hmm.
artificial light is to our system. And actually, Damaris
Wow.
said years ago, I think it was the first year of my training with her, she said the electric light bulb was the most damaging invention to the human energy body. And I didn't really, I mean, I don't know if that still holds sway with like 5G and everything else,
Yeah.
but,
We've advanced quite a bit in attacking our cellular structure.
yeah. But it didn't really fully land at the time until, maybe 5 years ago, I really started shifting my circadian biology and paying attention to the rising and the setting sun. And now I really get how damaging artificial light is to
Oh,
our circadian biology and health
totally.
and rhythm. So just, that's just a little seed that I'm planting. If you want to try not
Mm-hmm.
turning on any lights at all during the sacred nights, I find it just absolutely nourishing and beautiful and delightful. I'll make a playlist of feel good tunes, songs
Sweet.
that just lift my spirits, and
Yeah.
we turn them on every night, my daughter and I, and we dance around to our feel good 13 sacred nights song list
I
in the
love that.
candlelight.
Yeah.
And then whatever the other things are, I get more regular about my practices. I
Mm-hmm.
Again, time in nature is really big for me. I really make sure that I get to the ocean, that I always want to spend at least one night up in Big Sur. I have the
Oh,
blessing of living close to Big Sur.
God, I love that
And
place.
yeah, I know the energy there is just wow. So
Mm-hmm.
so those are some of the things that I do, but it would be
Yeah,
unique to
exactly.
every person who engages in this practice. Yeah.
Yeah, you're bringing up an interesting thing about the light, and that is so true. And because I think of these nights as time to reset our nervous system, but that's in the time of the year when some people feel the busiest. I was with a client the other day, and he's like, Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. And he said, because you don't have all these lists and gifts and pressure and all, you just show up and you eat and you like cook together. And I was thinking about how stressful the holidays are for so many
Yeah.
people. And so two things on that. One is like, I like to hold these sacred holy nights as a time for a reset in the nervous system, but it can be very challenging when things are really full. So I wonder if you have any comments on that. And then the second question is, have you ever tried in the candle to also be tech free and blue light
Mm.
free? I mean, clearly blue light is a phone, but
Yeah, that would be easier if I wasn't, like sharing this practice with the world and now leading
yeah.
Zoom classes.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's actually
Yeah.
so ironic because I'm out there like preaching stillness, and then because of the nature of my offering, I'm like,
Right.
but it's okay. I'm here for it. I'm stepping into the role and what's being asked, and it's clearly a divine assignment. So here I am.
Definitely.
But yeah, if we pay attention to what nature is doing during the peak of
Mm-hmm.
winter, the trees have shed their leaves, animals are slowing down, hibernating in darkness. Plants and grasses and seeds have receded deep into the earth.
Yeah.
Everything has this feeling of conserving energy and drawing energy inward. And then here we are in our Northern Hemisphere modern culture, shopping compulsively, overindulging in sugar and alcohol, which is
Mm-hmm.
taxing the body as opposed to
Yeah.
conserving energy. We are jam packing our calendars. As you noted, it is the busiest time of year for most folks. We're
Mm-hmm.
flooding our lawns with false LED lighting, which is just like a slap in the face to the darkness. Like this resistance, right? Like, no, we will not go inward. We will not be still. We will not wrap ourselves in the cloak of the radiant darkness, and we are just, it's been hijacked. The true gift of this season, which is the radiant darkness, we've been fully distracted from.
Mm.
And I like to think about how, if you were to light a match in broad daylight, it's kind of underwhelming. But when
Yeah.
you light a match in the darkness, it's so clear where the light is. And so we have this opportunity. We are being hugged by the darkness. We're surrounded by darkness, and we have this opportunity to get quiet and to get still. The season itself, the elements of nature are supporting us in this quiet, still inward dive where we will have an opportunity to witness the internal spark,
Mhm.
right? That flame, that internal flame. And so, yeah, I don't remember the original question.
That was beautiful. I think that there's such a beautiful part about the practice is that we all decide what elements feel important each year. So I was, I think I was thinking when you said the candlelight, I was thinking to myself, I wonder what it would be like if I committed to not being on my phone at night. That feels really hard. But I
Yeah.
can imagine what it would do for my nervous system. And I can imagine. So I think all of these are just choices around, even if we're really busy. I think that's the seed I want to plant right now. Where are those few minutes in the day where we
Mm.
can be in the darkness, even if that's closing our eyes for a few minutes, just to activate that deeper listening that can help
Yeah.
us notice what we're receiving?
Mm. Yeah. And I will say too that, you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like I mentioned at the
Mm-hmm.
very beginning, regardless of what your current traditions are, this isn't an either or. It might be. Some people, I have many friends and people who've picked up the Oracle deck and they're just done with the traditional mainstream holidays, and that's fine too. But
Mm-hmm.
if you have traditions that do feel nourishing or that you're not ready to let go of, that's perfectly fine. And we still have a Christmas tree. I'm looking at it right now. I have this big, giant baby blue. It looks like Cookie Monster, fake Christmas tree that my daughter picked out years ago that she loves. And we have this wonderful ornament collection, and a lot of them are passed down from my grandmother, and so I still do that. But I walk around during the holidays like I have a sacred little secret in my pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And even if I'm out in the world shopping or doing some of those more mainstream holiday activities, I am anchored in a much deeper place internally. And I'm noticing the twinkle in everyone's eyes. And I am feeling as if I'm walking with God, and in God. And it's just a different, um, what's the word? I don't know. It's just a different internal position, that I'm holding in relationship to that time, even if I'm still out doing some of the more usual holiday activities, and some of it the practice has given me permission to let go of. The external lights around the house, that was a dreaded yearly chore for me. I mean, the tangled strands and the ladder, and my arms would get achy, and all the clips. And then there was that one spot that we couldn't reach with the nail. And I just hated it every year. And I finally was like, why am I doing this? This is not, I just, I can pick and choose the things that are
Exactly.
nourishing to me and the things that are not. And so this practice really it's given me, the permission
Mm-hmm.
to curate the holiday season, this winter solstice season, in the way that works for me personally.
I love that. Yeah, because I think about, when you were talking in the beginning about this time of darkness, and I think about how magical the lights are at this time of year. And so just figuring out the thing that brings us joy, which I think goes
Yeah,
back to whatever that is that lights us up, is changing our brain chemistry and really doing a lot of the nervous system work of bringing us into a state of joy, which changes so much
yeah,
inside and outside. So uh, let's talk about. So we've got a map here, and if people want to find your Oracle book, I'll have the links and everything about you in the show notes. And I want you to talk about your program in a moment. So we've got this arc of the days, the preparation phase, then the 13 sacred holy nights, and then the year begins. So what do? You've got your journaling, you've got, each day in its own special place or however you've done that. What's your practice throughout the year then of revisiting? How would you guide
Yeah.
people?
Yeah, and this part is so important because so many people tend to do the 13-day practice itself and then they forget about their journal. And yeah,
I'm one of
throughout,
those people.
throughout the rest of the
I
year.
was. Yeah.
And you have co-created hand in hand personally with the divine this beautiful roadmap. And
Mhm.
so it's so sad to forget about it for the
It
remainder
is.
of the year. And so it's I mean, time and time again, my journals have proven to be more insightful than my very best friend, the best therapist I ever had, like better than, the, the, the most expensive astrological reading you can buy. It's like your own crystal ball. I mean, it's just
Right?
incredible. Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. And so what I do is at the end of each month, I take a moment, I read over whatever I wrote in my journal, the card that I drew for the month gone by. And I just notice, was there anything that lined up? Was there any
Mm.
synchronicity that I didn't notice as I was moving through the month? Because I will also refer to my journal anytime life gets challenging, or even if there's something unexpected and joyful happens. I kind of always refer back to I keep it close. I keep it
Mhm.
available. It's always, on the kitchen table or somewhere really accessible on my desk. Uh, and even if I go on trips or things, I take it with me,
Mhm.
and so it's always with me, and it's always there as a reference. And the beautiful thing about referring to it frequently is that you begin to witness time and time again these synchronicities,
Mhm.
and every time you witness a synchronicity, it concretizes your faith in the unseen and in the mystery and in this greater order. And it feeds upon itself because the more you experience it, the more you believe in it, and the more you believe in it, the more it happens. And so it really is
Mhm.
this beautiful process of growing your faith, right? And not that blind trust. It's a faith built on lived experiences. And so I, again, when I'm going through the month, if something is up that feels a little crazy, I'll refer back to my journal. Oh my goodness, what did I write about? What's the card that I drew? Can I glean any insight or perspective from my journal? And then also I take it's this wonderful. It's like a bookends to each month, so you get this opportunity to kind of reflect back and then pivot and
Mhm.
reorient to, okay, now I have this new guide and what's on the horizon, and oh, isn't this a delightful theme to live into? And you get this little preview. Well, what did I write down in my notes? And what's coming? And so it's this really beautiful rhythm and way of moving through your year with more magic, more guidance. It carries the thread of the sacred throughout the entire year for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. So I've had to put in my calendar a date at the end of the year where I just do a holy night, sacred nights review. And I think that that's what you're speaking to. If those of you who might be trying this for the first time, it's kind of nice to have a little structure around it so it doesn't get lost throughout the year, because you just said it so beautifully. I think this practice just amplifies once we recognize and acknowledge the synchronicities. I really truly feel like either more happen or I just become aware of more. And I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I do think there's an energetic field that will just start generating new opportunities. And I've also seen that with the seed planting, where, I think often so much of our cultural conditioning has potentially minimized or even devalued something like this because it's so woo woo, which is a way of dismissing just this innate depth of listening and agency with this higher intelligence that's moving through our body. It's in everything outside, like I said earlier. And so I appreciate you sharing kind of how you do the integration throughout the year. And I just wanted to add, for any listeners, it can be really nice to have a structure in the calendar to just make it another sacred date like you would a holy night, but it only has to be like half an hour
Yeah.
where you're like rereading, revisiting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even my daughter this last year, she goes, Mom, why don't you she writes her, we still live with paper calendars.
I love it. That's
I'm
perfect.
very analog. Like if I could get a car where I could like roll the windows down, I would. Um, but, you know, she goes, why you should write at the top of each month the oracle card that you drew. And I was like, oh, that's such a
Brilliant.
simple, easy, brilliant thing to do. I don't know why I didn't think of it myself. But yeah, just little things like that can keep you on track, can keep you reminded. I also was thinking it would be fun. You know, there's those little like clips that people put pictures in, or even like a
Yeah.
triple picture frame that has a spot for 3. You could put your yearly cards
Ooh.
in a frame like that, you know, and then
Yeah.
just set it on the mantle or somewhere so that you're just kind of constant, or your altar if you have an altar, but just sort of constantly
Yes.
reminded of what your guides are. So there could be little things like that.
Mm.
I had another thought that was bubbling to the surface that I may have lost. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if it comes
Yeah.
back, we can weave it back in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your deck is absolutely gorgeous. So if people want to play with this, whether they've done it or not before, your card again, your link will be in the show notes. Um, I would love for you to share a little bit before we close about this program and anything else that you're doing if people want to take a deeper dive or be guided in a container along
Yeah.
with this.
Yeah. So I the last handful of years I have taught a guided experience during the sacred nights, the 13 nights themselves. And so we meet on the winter solstice, and then the 3rd, 6th, 9th, and 13th sacred night. So we meet live on Zoom, and we do a little bit of Qigong. So if Qigong is not something that interests you, then this container might not be for you. We do move and get into our bodies and do a little Qigong practice, and then sit in center and experience what it is to discover that internal glassy lake where we can receive downloads and reflections from higher self. And then we'll do a little bit of journaling together, draw our oracle cards together, and that's sort of, you know, within the container of the 13 nights. And then there's a program there. So I have a meditation that's pre-recorded for
Mm.
each of the 13 nights that we're not meeting live. So that's that program, which I have led for the last 3 years. It's been very well received. I had a little resistance initially. A lot of people, when I first self-published the oracle deck, were asking for, you know, a live guided course, and I was like, I wrote the book, like what else do you want from me? Like, I just go do the practice, you know. But I finally leaned in, and then of course I was reminded of how magical coming together is, and gathering, and how magic is amplified when we come together in numbers exponentially, right? 1 + 1 is not 2 when it comes to human consciousness coming together. It's always exponential. There are always shared themes that bubble up in the group, and, you know, one person might mention something and then somebody else, oh my goodness, I had that too. And so you get this
Yeah.
beautiful cohesiveness, and the magic is just amplified. So that's been lovely. And then this year is the first year that I am extending the container throughout the entire year.
Mm.
So we will gather during the 13 sacred nights as we have, and on Zoom. And the Zoom recordings are always recorded for those who can't, you know, be present for the actual time.
Right.
And then we'll meet once a month throughout the remainder of the year to, you know, to just like you're saying, to have some kind of structure to keep us on track, to keep us reminding ourselves to notice the synchronicity, to reflect on the month gone by, to prepare for the month ahead, you know, to be in that container of community and all the richness that bubbles to the surface through just gathering together. And so that I'm offering that this year. I'm not making any promises about offering the year-long
Great.
you know, course in future years, but this year that's what I'm up to. And so if you feel called, all the information is on my website, which is just my name.com. So larajday.com. Yeah.
Great. And I will also have that in the show notes for anyone that wants to research that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Wow, what a beautiful experience to connect with you and talk about something that we both love so much. And is there anything else that you'd love to say about it before we close?
Yeah. You know, so as a closing thought, this last year, I've really gone deep again into the history of all of our holidays. And it's a tangled, messy history, but essentially they have been consciously rebranded, numerous times over by those in power or those seeking more power in order to steer and manipulate the behavior of the masses.
Mm.
And so, here we have landed in this place where we are sleepwalking through these traditions, not having any clue where they came from. And we are, in essence, it appears, worshiping shopping, sugar, and alcohol, and commercialism and materialism. And, this is important for two reasons. One, ritual is so, so powerful. It is this moment where we collectively pause within any given culture or society, and we all direct our attention in one way. And we engage in similar behaviors, and we're all in agreement, right? And if you believe, as I do, that human consciousness is divinely creative, that in and of itself is massively powerful. We are literally co-creating reality when we all pause and direct our attention in one way. But then, in addition to that, we are informing the upcoming generations, hey, mom and dad are taking work off. You're getting out of school. We're doing this ritualistic thing. This is what we worship. This is what's most important about being human. And so we are informing the younger generations about, this is how you be the best human in this society. And right now, like I said, we are teaching our children that what's most important is consumerism, materialism, shopping, sugar, and alcohol. So if we can just pause and, in a lot of the podcasts that I've been on, I've been divulging a lot of the history of our holidays and where they all actually came from. And so if we can acknowledge that this wasn't an organic happening, we didn't end up here by accident. We have to some degree been spoon fed, these traditions for manipulative purposes. uh, then we can sort of wake up and rediscover our agency and take a moment to pause individually and collectively and decide how we want to mark these sacred turning points in the year, and what do we want to worship, and what is most important about being human. And I just think that it's time for a bottom up rebrand as opposed to top down.
And say something on that. So bottom up as opposed to top down, just for listeners, what do you mean by that?
I mean that each one of us has the opportunity to decide, how we want to do this.
Yeah.
What's most important? What nourishes us? Again, what like the sacred nights? What brings me joy? What brings me more vitality and more connection with myself and with the other humans all around me and with the divine.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, now I'm so curious about all the history of the holidays. So we'll have to have another conversation at some point.
After the sacred nights this year, after I make it through this season, I'm going to write the book. So
okay, great. Well, I'll look forward to reading
that's
that.
my next adventure. Yeah.
Wonderful. Lara, it's so wonderful to have you here. Thank you. Blessed holy
Yeah.
nights, sacred nights to you. Enjoy
Likewise.
your Cookie Monster Christmas tree. I'd love to see a picture of that.
Yeah.
I hope to connect again soon.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
reaching out. Just really lovely.
So
Yeah.
good.